Hi everybody, welcome to month 8. I have opened my kit and followed my cutting instructions. So I have my print fabrics and my background fabrics cut already following those instructions. And now I'm going to turn to page 18 and 19 of my pattern, and I'm going to follow the instructions to begin assembling block 8. The first thing we're going to do is make some half square triangles, and we're going to take the 3 1/4 inch squares that we cut diagonally in half of our background fabric, and we're going to take one set of the 3 1/4 inch squares of our print fabrics, and we're going to use these to assemble half square triangles. We're then going to trim them to 2.5 inches square. So I will go make these and I will come back. All right, so I've assembled my half square triangles and I've trimmed 3 of the 4 of them. I just want to show you how I trim these. I have my square ruler here, which has a 45-degree angle on it. And we need to trim each one of these half square triangles to 2.5 inches square. So they're definitely oversized. They're actually about 3 inches, the way I've sewn them together anyway. So what I do is I take this 45-degree angle and I line it up with the diagonal on my half square triangle. I just make sure that what I'm cutting off is still going to allow me 2.5 inches here. And then I'm going to trim 2 sides. And then I'm going to flip it around. Now I'm going to line it up with my diagonal and my 2.5 inch lines on my ruler. And I'm going to trim those 2 sides. Okay, so I now have my 4 half square triangles that are half print fabric and half background fabric. We can move on to step 2 now, and we're going to be making that flying geese block. We'll take one of the background triangles that we've cut and one set of our background fabrics, again, that were already cut into triangles. And we're going to line these up with the bottom corner here. And we're going to sew along this line. So we'll sew that seam for all 4 of our triangles with our 4 different print fabrics. We'll then press towards the dark, and we'll come back and we'll then get our second triangle and assemble it here, add it to the other side to create our flying geese block. So I will go take that step and be right back. Okay, so now we're going to move on to step 3. And with step 3, we are going to take our 3 3/8 inch square from our background fabric, and we're going to use the final triangles here. So what we're going to do is arrange them in whatever order makes sense to you. I'm going to play with this for a second. I think maybe I like it spread out like that. Again, you can put your colors in whatever order works for you. And we are going to add the triangles to the sides of the square. We've done this shape before, but to just remind you how I usually center this, I'm going to pinch, fold this in half, wrong sides together, and pinch to find the center. You can see I've got two creases there. And then I'm going to crease my triangles, again folding them in half. And I'm going to line that up. I can put a pin right in there, which I don't have with me right now, but I'm going to put a pin in there before I sew. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I can sew these 2 triangles on, press them to the dark, and then come back and I can trim off the little dog ears, then add the other triangles. So I'll go do this step and I'll come back to add the other triangles. Okay, I've sewn the first 2 triangles to my center square. And before I add the other 2, I'm just going to trim off these dog ears. So I'm just going to line up my ruler with the edge of my background fabric and trim off those 2 little guys. Then flip it around and do the same on the other side. I'm going to find the center once again so I can place these other 2 triangles. And I'm going to do this by folding, again, not necessarily to the outer fabrics. I'm going to keep my square, I'm going to fold basically to my square here. I'm going to edge to edge here and then edge to edge here. Okay, so I've got those creases. Now I can crease my other triangles to line them up and add them to the other sides of this block. All right, and I'll go sew those now. Okay, so my 4 triangles are now attached to my center block. I need to trim this to 4.5 inches square. And again, I want to make sure that I'm keeping my points as intact as possible. So I'm going to line up my 1/4 inch line with one of my points. And I'm kind of going to center this because I'm a little bit off, just a little bit. But I'm going to make sure my center line, or my line here, goes right through the center of my diamond shape here. Okay, so I've got this piece is on this tick line is the 1/4, so I'm going to cut off that side. This is one of those that you're going to trim one side at a time. So let me go ahead and trim that one. Now that I know that that side is straight, I can go to the other side and just trim that 4.5. Okay, and since I already made sure my 1/4 was in place, I know I'm good there. Can now trim the other direction. Okay, so I know I'm going to be at 4.5. Let's go ahead and add that tick mark here. All right, we're looking pretty good. But this time you also just want to make sure that you are on the your edges are parallel with your tick lines on your ruler, because we want to make sure that we're square. Okay, so again, I'll cut off to 1/4 inch from the point, and now this last seam should be good, or this last cut should be good and nice and square. Okay, so that is step 3 for block 8. Next, we have step 4, and that's assembling the middle of the block. So we have our unit C, as it's called, in step 3. And first we're going to use our half square triangles. Let's just lay this out following the diagram on page 19. So it looks like we have this guy here, this guy here, this one here, and this one here. Okay, so I'm going to sew these 2 half square triangles together and these 2 half square triangles together, and then I'm going to sew them to my middle block. Now, the flying geese are going to also be sewn together. So I'll be able to sew those 2 flying geese together and these 2 together as well. This will be a row, this will be a row, and this will be a row. And when I sew the 3 rows together, I'm going to end up with my center block. Okay, so I'll go take that step, and we'll come back to add our setting pieces. And poof, block 8 center is complete. I've added the triangles for all the points of our stars and all of the units that we made in month 0, our setting triangles as well as our cornerstones. So following the instructions on page 29 in my book, I'm going to make all of these fancy flying geese for the points of my star, then assemble this in rows. And poof, block 8 is assembled. Excuse the wet spots, my iron is spinning all over the place this evening. Once you finish block 8, don't forget to do your flying geese block. If you're following the instructions in the book, you can find them on page 30 and 31. Otherwise, you can use the paper piecing templates you received earlier in this project and follow the instructions on those. Thanks everyone. Hope you enjoyed this block.